So Anaconda is getting a reboot starring Jack Black and Paul Rudd, because why not? And because this franchise is getting a weird sort of soft reboot, I thought it'd be a good idea to actually do a review of the original 1997 film, so here we are.
Booga booga.
I'm not here to tell you that Anaconda is a good movie. Let's be real, if you came here for high art and nuanced storytelling, you're probably lost or you accidentally clicked on the wrong link. What I am here to tell you, with the kind of unwavering conviction usually reserved for flat earthers and guys who swear by their crypto investments, is that Anaconda is absolutely, unequivocally perfect at being exactly what it is. It's a magnificent, gloriously unpretentious $45 million B movie that somehow, against all odds and critical drubbing, slithered its way to a $137 million box office haul. It's that cinematic equivalent of that one friend who's always a little too much, a little too loud, but you'll love him anyway. This thing didn't just make money, it became a cultural touchstone. Perhaps most importantly, it gave us Jon Voight's eyebrow gymnastics, a performance so committed to being unhinged that it deserves its own dedicated wing in the B-Movie Hall of Fame. So forget your cinematic pretensions, grab your bug spray and maybe a stiff drink, and definitely your most robust suspension of disbelief, because we're about to go through the most accidentally iconic creature feature of the entire Quentin era. We're talking about a film that dared to ask, what if Jaws was in the jungle and everyone was just a little bit dumber? The answer, my friends, is pure, unadulterated cinematic gold. And if you haven't subscribed, do that now. The story for Anaconda on the surface seems simple enough, as long as you don't think too hard. It follows a National Geographic film crew who are on the hunt for an elusive Amazonian tribe known as the Shirishama. The crew hires a boat captain who seems familiar with the area to navigate the film crew to the natives. Along the way, they pick up a shipwrecked stranger called Paul Serone, because getting shipwrecked on a river is, I guess, a thing. And he's played by none other than legendary Jon Voight. Turns out the guy is a snake hunter who, along with the ship's captain, has planned a clever ruse of roping in the film crew to help the two hunters capture the largest anaconda known to man so they can get a massive payday. Well, at least it would have been massive for the 90s. After several people get bumped off, the film crew finally realizes how nefarious Serone is. The remaining characters finally get the upper hand on Serone, end up getting away and killing the second of two giant anacondas. Like I said in the intro, this is not a highbrow film that was meticulously hammered out in the writing room. The premise circles around the film crew getting duped into helping a couple of game hunters capture a giant snake. Never mind the fact that none of these people has any experience hunting anything, and never mind the fact that they never needed the film crew to accomplish this goal in the first place. The audience learns relatively quickly that Serone, the boat captain Mateo, and another poacher introduced in the first scene of the film are all professional hunters that have worked together in the past. So why do they need the film crew? Answer: because the movie says so. It's that simple. But the writers and directors take this idea seriously, and it shows. And because of that, the film is oddly able to achieve its overall goal. Namely, creeping the hell out of the viewers and making you hate Voight's character to the point that when he's finally off, you can't help but cheer. Now, I know that stupid characters in horror films go hand in hand, but Anaconda, I feel, set the bar. And again, it comes back to Serone. From the moment that guy shows up, he's creepy, arrogant, and just kind of a dick, and it becomes very clear soon after meeting him that he's not the most reliable or honest person in the world. Eric Stoltz plays Dr. Stephen Kale, the one leading the expedition for the Shirishama. He's a smart guy, and when Serone tries peddling some lie about Shirishama mythology, Kale immediately calls him on it because he's familiar with the story, namely that it belongs to a completely different tribe. And in another part of the film, it becomes very clear that Serone is trying to deliberately guide the film crew down a path in the river that doesn't make any sense for where they want to actually be. But does Kale or anyone else do anything about it? No. And I know the film crew is filled with first world folks who won't just throw someone overboard because they're shady, and I wouldn't necessarily either. But at what point do you stop listening to the guy who has all the charm of Clown from the Spawn movie and realize, hey, I think we should tie this guy up? Now, for anyone who has seen this movie, it's clear that the snakes in this film do not operate the way actual snakes do. For one, they seem to have access to higher levels of reason, being able to remember and identify the major threat in a given situation. They also seem to have an almost sadistic and at times even ethereal side to them. One of the characters, once everything has gone to hell, refers to the main Anaconda as the devil, and I think the writers were explicitly channeling that idea in this movie, for better or worse. I mean, at the beginning of the film, Danny Trejo, yes, the Danny Trejo, is actively hunted and killed by an anaconda in the opening scene. He dies hanging on the mast of his boat, which looks weirdly like a cross, all while the giant snake curls around his body. And yes, I'm aware there's dual symbolism here. Just keep in mind the description I just gave you, and compared to the official insignia of the United States Medical Corps, Navy Pharmacy Division, and the Public Health Service, the caduceus. Another weird choice they made for the snakes is how often they eat, which seems daily. I don't know if you're aware of this, but snakes aren't known for eating large quantities of anything on a consistent basis. I've had several snakes, all constrictors, and at most they ate maybe once a month, depending on the season. These guys are eating full-sized human beings at least once per day. Now, that could be ignorance on the part of the writers on how these animals actually operate, a writing choice to show these things are supernatural, or just a plot device that makes the snakes more of an imminent threat. I don't know, but regardless, the snakes are unnerving and scary. I venture to say you'd be familiar with the vast majority of the cast in this movie. As I mentioned before, we have Jon Voight, Eric Stoltz, and Danny Trejo. But we also have Jennifer Lopez, Ice Cube, Owen Wilson, Jonathan Hyde, and Carrie Wurr. It's a 90s treasure trove of talent. I mentioned earlier that the writers and directors took the story seriously, and it shows in this movie. The actors do the exact same. No matter how stupid they may behave or how ludicrous the plot may be, these actors nail it from start to finish. Oddly enough, the standout performance in this film comes from Eric Stoltz. Now, this guy is a special case because he spends approximately 80% of the film in a coma. He's introduced as this brilliant, intense academic, and then, boom, a poisonous wasp to the throat, and he's basically a prop. He's literally unconscious for most of the runtime, yet still manages to play a pivotal, albeit silent, role. It's truly a masterclass in passive acting. The other highlight is Jonathan Hyde as Warren Westridge, the smug, pompous narrator of the doomed film crew. He's a weird blend of character we were supposed to hate when we're first introduced to him, but somehow he becomes a character who cares for the people around him, gets off some of the funniest dialogue in the film, and is kind of a badass by the time we get to the mid-movie climax. And he's the only one in the film crew who, for the most part, doesn't make any stupid mistakes. And yes, Voight's Serone stands out ahead of everyone, but that's a given. Just look at the guy.
May the souls of the faithful depart through the mercy of God. Rest in peace. Amen. Non-departing Filius Spiritus Sancti.
Alright, if you're enjoying this deep dive, then do yourself a favor and tap the subscribe button. We've got more reviews and breakdowns dropping every single month, and hey, leave a comment and tell me which snake scene from Anaconda or any other movie traumatized you the most. I read every comment. Now, let's get back to the review. Imagine walking into a warehouse and seeing a 40-foot, 5,000-pound segmented steel spine stretched out on the floor like some kind of prehistoric dinosaur fossil. It wasn't just a prop, it was a bona fide engineering marvel. Each individual vertebrae, every single one, housed its own miniature hydraulic pump, a pressure valve, and a feedback sensor. Walt Conti's team, the mad geniuses behind this thing, machined almost 200 custom parts just for each joint. That's just so the neck could kink and coil the way a real constrictor does right before it decides to ruin your day. Programming the basic travel of every single one of those pistons, that took an overnight mainframe crunch like some supercomputer from a sci-fi flick just dedicated to making a snake wiggle. But even with all that tech, the actual head, the scary part, still had to be driven by hand. Conti himself was on a joystick, eyes glued to a video feed, trying to time that perfect, terrifying lunge to the camera. And it wasn't a one-minute show. You had 10 other puppeteers, each one responsible for a 3-meter section of that snakeskin. It was a ballet of grease, sweat, and precision. One miscue, one slightly delayed pull, and the serpent looked less like a fearsome predator and more like it just broke its back. The margin for error was razor thin, and the stakes were high for selling that illusion. Then there was the water, and water was the enemy. Hydraulics, as any mechanic will tell you, absolutely despise humidity. And the Amazonian set? It was basically a perpetual misting machine, a giant natural humidifier trying its best to seize up millions of dollars worth of equipment. So what do? Engineers, bless their hearts, wrapped every single servo in condom-thin rubber sheaths and ran nitrogen lines through the whole thing just to purge the condensation. It sounds like something out of a Rube Goldberg machine, but it was their reality. And even with all that, the thing still seized up mid-take, probably just out of spite. On one particularly notorious afternoon, the snake bucked, slammed into the deck of the boat, and just kept spasming. Jon Voight's eyes went wide and not in character. Jennifer Lopez's scream, no ADR required. It was pure terror. And you know what? That happy accident, that terrifying malfunction, stayed in the final cut because the reaction was gold. Sometimes chaos delivers. Now, as impressive as the practical snake was, it couldn't do everything. Close-ups, that's mostly animatronic, but anything wider than dinner table, anything where the snake had to really move, swim, or do something truly impossible for a giant robot, that's CG. And this is where Sony Pictures ImageWorks stepped up. These guys had never, and I mean never, birthed a fully synthetic lead character before. So what do you do when you don't have the tools? You invent them. They wrote brand new software that treated the snake not as a single model, but as a chain of rigid bodies connected by virtual tendons. Anyone familiar with 3D animation rigging will know what I'm talking about. And it was revolutionary for its time. The solver, the thing that made all those segments move correctly, ran overnight on these clunky SGI Indigo 2s. Each frame rendered on those machines probably cost a sizable chunk of change. Water interaction, though, that was the real headache. Anyone who's tried to animate water will tell you it's a nightmare. A snake slicing through a current isn't just a static model. It displaces a bow of wave, a trough, a wake. It's got all this complex interaction. If you simulate that wrong, even subtly, the audience subconsciously files the image under cartoon, and the whole illusion is shattered. So the team got clever. They shot locked-off plates of the river, projected them onto proxy geometry, basically a digital stand-in for the snake, then ran a particle cast just for the foam and spray. Then the compositors, the wizards who glue it all together, blended 3 separate render layers: deep green for the snake's body, muddy brown for the river, and a gray pass just for the specular highlights, those shiny bits that catch the light. It was a painstaking process. If you pause the movie on that iconic waterfall stunt shot where the snake lunges out of the trees, you can still spot the telltale black halo where the roto team feathered the alpha. It's a tiny imperfection, and at 24 frames a second, your brain buys it hook, line, and sinker. You're too busy thinking, holy crap, a giant snake is about to eat that guy, to notice the pixel-level detail. And let's not forget about scale. That's another one of those sneaky cheats. Real anacondas, the biggest ones you'll ever find, rarely exceed 20 feet. This one? Double that, easily. So ImageWorks animators, being the diligent nerds they were, studied National Geographic footage, probably watching countless hours of real snakes just slithering around. Then they stretched every single slither cycle by exactly 1.94 times to hit that desired terrifying silhouette. By today's standards, the CG of the snake is nothing special, but back then it was insane to watch and scary as hell. Look, Anaconda isn't Jaws, and it isn't Jurassic Park, and it sure as hell isn't Werner Herzog's acquired Around the God, despite sharing a river and a certain level of madness. What it is, fundamentally, is a cinematic jack-in-the-box that pops every 15 minutes, startling you with genuine terror, with rubber snakes, increasingly absurd accents, and Owen Wilson's impeccable hair. Yet somehow, through the sheer unblinking commitment of Jon Voight's creeper face, through the clunky charm of a puppet that probably weighed more than a Honda Civic, it carved out a cult riverbed in the landscape of cinema. And that riverbed keeps refilling reliably every single time a new viewer stumbles across it at 2 a.m. on basic cable, or while scrolling through streaming options, desperately searching for something truly, gloriously unhinged. So, did you see Anaconda when you were a kid? Did it scar you forever to hate snakes? Let me know in the comments. And let me know if there's another monster movie you want me to review. After all, Halloween is right around the corner. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share it to anyone who loves watching movies.
Booga booga.